Monday, May 12th. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geeknights. Tonight, we present the humble video card.
Let's do this.
So all this week, I actually don't have to go to work, which it was weird because I woke up and I had this dream and someone comes up to me and says, "You have to wake up in 5 minutes." And I woke up and I go, "Ugh." And I grab my phone and I look at it and it says 4:35, which, yeah, I would have to wake up in 5 minutes if I was going to work. So I went back to bed, and a few hours later, I woke up and went to training. Down on Wall Street, I'm doing this training for a BMC service desk. It's like this giant enterprise ticketing system. I got a week of training to do, which I got to admit, going to train, I mean, everyone else who goes to training for tech stuff is always like, I'm going to training. But I was super excited, I think partly because I missed college, and it was like going to class.
Yeah. What did they actually teach you stuff there, or was it sort of hokey?
Actually, it was super good. Like, we got a textbook, and I learned a lot already.
I was wondering about those training things.
Well, I think a lot of them are crap, but this one is surprisingly not crap.
Did the other people there seem like they cared?
Yeah, because there's only 10 people.
Oh, okay.
But the cool thing is...
I guess if you didn't care, you'd stand out, wouldn't you?
Every morning, we get bagels and lox and cream cheese.
That's nice.
And then for lunch, we get a really, really nice lunch at this fancy, like, pub, bar, and grill down the street.
Well, you get what you paid for.
Well, I didn't pay crap.
Well, I mean, someone paid a lot for it.
Yeah, the class was like $3,500.
Yeah. That costs as much as like 8 weeks of summer camp.
Yeah, they flew the instructor out from Texas. So he's like, yeah, class ends a little early today at 4:30 because I'm going to see Letterman. I got some tickets.
Yeah, it's a lot of people like to do that when they come to the city. I'm really not interested in seeing Letterman at all.
But as a result, I had to take the 705 Express instead of my usual 532 Express.
Whoa.
And the train was crowded, but...
The 705 is like the most crowded train because it goes straight there.
But me, Emily, and Alex, we all walked down to the train station.
You went on the 705? I thought they were taking the 728.
No, they take the 705 now.
No, I don't.
They get up early.
I can't do that 705.
It's worth it because then they leave
I used
early.
to do it. Now I don't do it. I think I'm actually going to start taking the 820.
Yeah, well, that's because of your weird work stuff.
Yeah.
Man, I used to take like the 732. That was when I worked in Yonkers, and I'd show up at work like 9:15. I'd always stop and get like breakfast on the way.
Lately, I've been taking like the 744. I mean, I mean to take the 728.
Yeah, by 7:44, I've been at work for an hour.
I mean, I was taking the 728, and I was sort of happy with that one. But I think the 44 is like it's local, but that's the one I've been doing. So I don't know.
Yeah. Well, see, if I go home, I take the 410 or the 445, which is one of those semi-locals.
I was taking the 509, but today I took the 552. It's not.
It's like the last train you want to take is the 529 or the 523. It's the same as the 509. It's just later.
Yeah, this one was not good.
Yeah, but anyway, so I get on this train. It's really crowded, and the three of us realize we all can't sit next to each other. So the three of us kind of go in a row to, well, like me and like Emily goes to this one seat of three-seaters, and I go to the three-seater behind her, and we're both like, "Excuse me, can I sit there?" And the guy in my seat goes, "Oh, sure thing," and he stands up. And the guy Emily asked looks at her like, "Are you talking to me?" And she's like, "Yeah, can I sit there?" Of all the seats on the train, you got to sit here. There's plenty of seats, and you have to sit here, goddamn tourists. And now I'm looking at him, and she's looking at him, and the other woman in the three-seater is looking at him, and everyone in the car is looking at him like, okay, dude.
Well, you have to let her sit there. You have no choice.
Oh, no, he does. He's getting up, but he's like, "Why can't you sit somewhere else? There's plenty of seats." So this time, I decide to intercede a little bit, and I say, "Actually, no, there aren't. We came from the other side of the train."
Yeah.
He's like, "That's bullshit. That's a goddamn lie. There's plenty of seats on this goddamn train." And now, just to be
I'd have been like, if there's so many seats and you're not happy, why don't you go find one?
No. I played. See, I guess I'm just really good at irritating people if I want to. So I kind of say to him, this is the kind of thing that I would never say, but I knew it was what would tick him off. Well, foul language isn't going to get you anywhere. And he glares at me, and he says, "Goddamn tourists, I'm a businessman. You people don't understand business. You gotta blah, 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 blah." And I'm looking at him like, "Businessman? You're a businessman. Big fancy businessman. I'm on my way to Wall Street, dude."
You don't work on Wall Street. You work right on 42nd
No,
Street.
I was on my way to Wall Street. That's where
you
the
were.
training is.
You were, you're right.
Plus, I work for effectively a Wall Street company.
Yeah, you keep saying you work on Wall Street to sound all fancy, right? Well, you know who else works on Wall Street? The Wall Street hot dog vendor, all right? So
Actually, there aren't all the vendors over there aren't on Wall Street. They're on Broadway.
I'm just saying. Yeah.
But I was going to Wall Street that one day.
I'm not disputing that one.
So the guy's like, I'm a business, and he keeps saying like, I'm a businessman, I'm a big man. You got to respect me and my businessy man stuff. So he grumbles and grumbles, but eventually Emily just sits down next to him, and he sits there like in a huff, and you see he keeps going. You know, people do that all the time when they're huffing and puffing.
Huffing and puffing. He's a big bad wolf. Oh no.
And finally, Emily's like, "Fine, I'll go sit somewhere else, Mr. Businessman."
Oh.
And she goes to get up, and then he's like, and he's real uncomfortable because pretty much everyone on the car is staring at him now. Like, dude, what's your problem? Mm-hmm. And the woman sitting next to him is giving him the stink eye times 1,000.
The stink eye.
She was cool. We talked to her afterward, like, what was his deal? Yeah, businessman, my ass.
Stink eye.
But she was giving him the stink eye, and finally he gets up in a huff and he walks away toward the front of the train.
Mm-hmm.
So then Emily and I sit next to that cool lady, and she's like, I don't know what that dude's problem was. We talked for a while, and then we all put on our respective headphones and go about our, train ride. And then a few minutes later, I see the guy huffing and puffing going back in the other direction because he obviously couldn't find a seat by himself.
Yep. Oh. Is he going to stand? Is he going to sit in the bathroom?
I love how his thought, like his insult was, goddamn tourist, I'm a businessman. I think he realized the error when we all had, monthly train passes just like him.
Yeah. Some crazy dude. What do you want?
I thought it was pretty funny.
Yeah, it would be pretty funny if I would have been there. I would have been laughing it up. I also would have made him much angrier. I would have been like, "Oh yeah, big businessman, right?" Ooh, and I would have, I could have turned it up. I probably would have gotten him I probably would have taunted him until he would have assaulted me. And
that would have been fantastic.
That would have been awesome. And then the conductor would have come and he would have gone to jail, and I would have been like, businessman, huh? Well, there's a lot of businessmen where you're going. They know all about the, behind the scenes business. Soap business, shower business.
But that was my train ride.
Yeah. Oh, well.
That's all I got. I was playing Civ 4 and watching Princess Tutu the rest of the way on the train.
Yeah, my work's getting a little weird now. Some of the people who were there, longer than me, right, are starting to, leave. Some of them leave for legitimate reasons. Some of them left, I don't know why, right? And then...
Wait, how can you leave a work for non-legitimate reasons? It's New York. You can quit for any reason at any time.
Well, actually, you know what I found out? The fact that you can quit for any reason at any time...
means that they can fire you at any time for any reason.
But, you know how some people call that right to work? That's not what right to work is. Right to work is actually something we don't have. Right to work means if there's a union, you can't be forced to join it. I wish we had right to work. We don't.
Because I was always told that right to work states include that clause and all the stuff about able to quit.
The stuff about, quit for any time, any reason, and fire for any time and any reason are work at will.
I must have conflated the two.
Right to work means you have a right to work there. You don't have to join the freaking union, you see? That's why I was always confused, because right to work, I was like, how does I can quit anytime I want to mean I have a right to work? That didn't really match up, And then I was like, oh, that's work at will. And right to work is don't have to pay union dues. You can work there anyway, even though you'll probably be strong-armed if everyone else is in the union. But,
well, now you know. Bing, bing,
and we don't have right to work in New York State, which is why if there's a union, you have to join it.
But at the same time, at least we have the other one. Because
yes, the other one is much... if I had to only pick one, I would take the one.
Well, part of that is because we work in an industry where there are no unions and there's no reason for unions.
Yeah, that's correct. All right. There's a lot of places where there's no reason for unions. But
there are places where, coal miners, I think they deserve a union.
Coal miners do need a union, yes. Anyway, so the point is, the work's getting a little weird. My number one, because in the tech department, right, there's the boss, right? Because the company is run by 4 partners, who I assume they each own 25% of the company. They all started it together, right? I'm just assuming that makes sense. And there's the partner who's the tech partner, right? There's the IT guy who does the sysadmitting. There's the guy who's the developer, when I got there, plus the tech partner is also a developer. And there's me. I'm the newer developer, right? the guy who is pretty much my number one coworker, the guy who was the developer when I got there, he was gonna quit, mostly because like, his family situation, like living in New York wasn't so good for him anymore, and he wants his kid to go to school somewhere good, and he couldn't really afford to live anywhere close enough, and it wasn't working out. So he wanted to move to Boston. He's got some family up there, and such. But so they were like, "Oh no, we can't let you go. We'll be screwed." Right?
But I believe we just determined that in this state.
Right. But they basically, they couldn't have stopped him from going, but they convinced him to keep staying. But they didn't convince him to physically stay. They basically said, all right, we'll let you go and you'll telecommute, whatever.
That's fine, because I remember the hospital tried to convince me to stay, and I was like, unless you give me 100% raise, I'm walking out the door today. So,
yeah, you should have said no, 100% raise on telecommuting.
The 100% raise would have been
well,
enough.
Well, a hospital job really wasn't a telecommute job, though.
No, it wasn't.
You had to go to places.
Now I have now my current job, I could do 90% of the job telecommuting.
I could telecommute my job. My boss sort of has this hang up about like they want people to be there.
I don't get that.
He's like it's not good. It's like it's not as the same as face to face.
You know what though? I think it's better in a lot of ways.
I also think
the thing is, I feel like you should have a mix. I mean, my ideal work situation, because even if I could telecommute,
I could show up sometimes. I don't have a problem.
What I'm saying
that.
is, even if I could telecommute, right, at my current job, I like going into the city. I actually enjoy my train rides. I like being down there. I like working with my coworkers. I feel like if I could telecommute as much as I wanted, I would probably telecommute like 2 days a week at most, except maybe in the summer. In the winter,
I think I would go to work at most 1 day every 1 or 2 weeks.
I guess our work's different. I do a lot of, I guess my charisma counts for a lot in the kind of work I do and the kinds of things I deal with, so it's kind of useful to be there in person.
I mostly just sit at the desk, and the only time I really need to be there is if someone sends me an email that tells me to do something, but they're not very clear, and I actually need to discuss it with them.
But you just do a WebEx.
All right, anyway.
Or we got all that set up now. I can video conference with anyone in any of the offices. Actually, it's cool. We have like this like all these sales offices around the country, around the world. So the sales area, right? We have this camera that points at all those people and like microphones in the ceiling. And there's a constant teleconference between all of our offices.
Can you see each other's screens? That'd be cool.
You can set that up, but we just see each other on that screen. And you can like, if you'll see, because people kind of all stand around the camera and just talk all the time with all the other offices. But
right.
We can also share desktops and video and everything.
Yeah, sharing the desktops is key for the tech people. But anyway.
Yes. Good God, it is.
So,
all right, click on this. Click on it. Just give me that.
In addition to that, they were going to hire this program manager guy, right, to sort of come in and sort of manage all the stuff, which would have been cool because then I wouldn't have had to like talk to people. He would have like talked to all the people I'm talking to now. So I wouldn't have had to use a telephone or anything. I could have just, he would have sorted all that business out for me and taken some of the work I don't want to do off my hands and such, right? And also taking care of our databases so I can concentrate more on the apps. But the guy, he agreed to work for us, and then 2 days before he was going to start working today, and like Thursday last week, he's like, yeah, fuck you. So what an ass. That was pretty unprofessional. I wouldn't do that.
Well, here's the problem.
At the very least, if I agree to work somewhere, I would show up, and I might quit really quickly, like the second day, but I wouldn't say, I wouldn't say yes and then say no. If I was going to say no, if there was any chance of me saying no, I wouldn't say yes yet. I'd say maybe hold on.
Yeah. I mean, I can foresee a situation. Well, let's say you accepted a job you were excited about. They're paying you, I don't know, $80,000 a year.
All right.
And then 2 days later, you're supposed to start in a week. You get offered a job that pays twice that.
See, that's the thing, is that if an offer really came out of nowhere like that, right? Like I didn't have like a pending thing on the table, then I would, if it just came out of nowhere, like someone just called me up randomly and said, I'll give you like $1 jillion, right? I'd say, well, I just accepted this other job. It'd be really rude if I like just, told them no after I told them yes. I'll work there a couple days and see how it is. And, just hold on to that money and I'll call you back next week, I promise, to tell you yes or no, I do something like that because it's a lot more asshole to be like, no, yes, no, because if you say yes, they've already stopped looking and it's sort of like,
yeah. But at the same time, it's kind of the IT world and the CS world is kind of weird because sometimes, like, there are obvious times when you don't want to burn your bridges. I mean, I like the people at IBM. I still talk to them on occasion, but sometimes you just burn all your bridges because you know you're never going to work in that sector again and you really don't care.
Yeah. But anyway, it's sort of like, we're in this situation where my work obviously needs me a lot because they're having trouble like hiring the people.
Well,
right?
demand a raise or more vacation days.
Yeah, and now they're telling me like, yeah, we'd like you to stay later, which is like doom. I almost missed the train coming home today. Because the time that they wanted me to leave does not work well with the train schedule, and I got home like an hour later, which pretty much just means I can have an hour less of sleep, and I'm gonna take away. I think I might take work off tomorrow just to get my shit sorted out. I got shit to sort out, like laundry and stuff, and
video.
Yeah, and stuff like that. So
it's actually our new boundary microphone will be here in a couple days.
Oh man, yeah,
that'll make doing video a lot easier.
I think I'm gonna take a day off this week. Calling sick maybe tomorrow. I don't know. But regardless, work's getting a little weird, but it's like I don't want to screw them because I like these people. That's why.
Well, that's when you lay down the ultimatum.
That's why I kept working there despite the work itself being kind of lame is because I like the peoples. But
it's like with the hospital when one time, there was a couple times.
But you didn't like the people at the hospital.
I liked a couple of the people. You know what, though? All the people I liked at the hospital quit while I was working there.
Yeah, it's like a lot of the people.
And every one of them was like, get the hell out. Get out as soon as you can. I'll give you references. You want to work where I'm going?
Yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do. The thing is, I was looking on Craigslist and there's mad jobs. There's so many jobs now. I'm like, no wonder I'm having a hard time finding people. Look at all these freaking jobs.
You know what I would do then? Tell your boss honestly, look, I'm not going to be a jerk and demand like some crazy high salary or demand like 4 months vacation because I know you need me.
I'm going to give it a week.
But what I would say is, but staying late is not going to make me accomplish anymore.
Yeah. Well, it's mostly not an issue of me accomplishing more. It's mostly an issue of, for example, the other people at the office work, set hours, right? And they might need something done at like 5, but I leave at 4:30. So it's because they work until like 6. They might need something done after I leave.
It seems like a lot of people I know.
If I'm not there, it's not going to get done until tomorrow morning.
It seems like a lot of people I know work in the city. They always show up to work real late, and then they leave real late.
Yeah, I don't understand these people. They show up, right, like at like 11, and then they leave at like 6 or 7. I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
I want to get home while it's still light out and do stuff.
Yeah, it's like I want to do things. It's like, where do you eat dinner?
Well, if you're in Manhattan, you just eat dinner out.
Well, I don't think these people aren't in Manhattan. One of the guys there is even crazy. He's so crazy. He fucking takes the bus, right, over to fucking Jersey, like to Bergen County. I'm like, holy shit. That's
when I worked at the hospital, there was a guy.
He must get home at like 8 or 9.
There was a guy who lived in Connecticut, far away, who worked in Yonkers every day. He drove an hour and 45 minutes.
That's just crazy.
I look at that, it's like, wow. I mean, I have an hour train ride, but none of that time is lost. I mean, I realized today, I watched 2 episodes of Princess Tutu on the way to work, and then I played some Civ 4. On the way home, I played Civ 4 while listening to Dave and Joel.
Yeah, on the way to work, I listened to podcast, and on the way home, I was sort of sleepy.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's move to some news here.
All right, so it's kind of a running gag at my work, but we often make fun of the French.
Because yeah, so funny to make fun of.
The other production support engineer at my level, he's French. He's a really cool guy.
So he pretty much has the same job as you?
Pretty much. I mean, it's like we're the same level, and we nominally, we do the same job. We support the production servers, the revenue-generating servers. Because actually, we should do a Monday show sometime about what enterprise really means, what all those, business terms are.
I got a funny anecdote. You ready? So one of our listeners today sends me a message, and he's like, do you know what data warehouses, he's like, can you tell me some of the advantages and disadvantages of data warehouses? And I'm like, what do you mean by data warehouses? Like a big building full of data, storage machines?
Do you know what that word is?
Hold on.
Because I can tell you what that fucking word means.
So hold on. So then he's like, no. And so I went to the Wikipedia for data warehouse. And data warehouse pretty much just meant use a database, you moron. That's pretty much what it means.
Yeah, well, usually what it really means is database plus SAN plus business methodology.
But according to
data.
According to the Wikipedia, it pretty much just meant keep all your data in one database or in some sort of centralized, cohesive, intelligent way so that you could actually get the most out of your data.
Let me put it this way.
So wait.
No.
I tell him, right? He's like, yeah, I'm at this new job, and they asked me if you knew what data warehouses were, right? So I'm like, That's obviously just a buzzword that just means use a database. It's a kind of word you use to explain to like a businessman who doesn't understand technology that, you should use a database and put all your data in a data warehouse.
Most enterprise words are basically just like they carry more baggage. Like the word data warehouse in the enterprise world does carry a lot more baggage than have a database.
I know, but it's,
I mean, but it involves a lot of, but the thing is, those words, the biggest misconception, do not describe technological solutions. They don't describe technology. They describe business processes and like the front end stuff and like how to put it together and like the methodology and the semantics and all that.
Right.
And the back end, the core stuff, the actual data warehouse is what the techies make, and it's just a database.
Yeah. So I tell him, yeah, you need those kind of words to explain to business people, because just, these common sense things. Because even though just having a database, a relational database, and making all the data useful seems like common sense to us. If you say that to a normal person, they'll have no clue what you're talking about. So you need to use a buzzword like data warehouse to convince them that, they shouldn't be just emailing Excel spreadsheets all around the office.
Besides, I'll tell you one other thing. In the majority of the IT world or the tech world, you can tell the people who deal with this stuff on a daily basis from those who don't, because people who don't will refer to it as a data warehouse or the data warehouse. But people who deal with it just say, I'm working on data warehouse. When are we going to finish data warehouse?
Yeah. So anyway, he ends up IMing me back like a few minutes later, right? Like a little while later. And he's like, yeah, apparently they said they need data warehouse, whatever, because the people are emailing around spreadsheets like you said. And I'm like, do I know or do I know?
God, we got to do a show. We need to do a Monday, a very specific, like, Ask Ribbon
What
Scott
not to
Monday.
use Excel spreadsheets? We could just do a whole show on.
Oh, you want to know the answer to what not to use Excel spreadsheets for? Fucking
anything. But except accounting.
And even then, you
Accounting
probably
only.
want a dedicated accounting system.
Probably.
Good God.
Anyway,
that's a whole separate show.
my
So,
news.
I didn't even do my news.
Fuck your news. My
I
news
said
is
the
better.
word France, and
That's right. It's your news is France.
so Google Streetview, which I think is fantastic.
It's pretty cool. It's useful, when you want to see like what a place looks like. Because a lot of times you'll know the address, but you won't, and you know the number. But like you look around, you won't see the number, and it's like some sort of hidden place. So with Google Street View, you can be like, aha, I sort of see a green sign there. Now I know what to look for.
You know how else it's useful? Say you look up a business and you find the address, and you look at the street view and realize that business hasn't been there for years.
It could also, you got to watch out. It could be one of those hidden inside the building businesses.
Yeah, but I used it to check whether a ski shop was there or not, and it wasn't on 2 occasions. And that was after I'd try to go and find the ski shops, and they weren't there. So,
But like the place I bought my Eddie-Matics, the hearing aid place, is like inside a building on like the 4th floor, deep inside.
well, if you're talking about that, you can't forget Picapita.
I know, right?
All right, but
And that Picapita has a scaffolding, so it's even worse.
Google Street View has run into a lot of problems in the United States, partly because, one, a lot of people do not understand the law when it comes to privacy and photography. And a lot of people think
lot
they
of
have a lot more
police
rights
don't
than they
know
do.
it, yeah.
But I'm not a lawyer. This is not a legal opinion. Do not take legal advice from Geeknights. However, as far as I'm aware, pretty much in most cases, you can take anything you can see with reasonable accommodation from a public place, you can take a picture of, and no one's allowed to stop you. Now,
Right. If you're standing on a public street, you can take pictures. You can't. The only exceptions are like you can't take I think you can't take like a zoom lens to peep into
yes,
someone's house.
you can't. If you take a telephoto lens shot of a naked person through their bedroom window, it's if someone has a reasonable expectation of privacy. However, the definition of reasonable is much stricter than most people realize.
Yep.
But anyway, so as a result, a lot of people get really bent out of shape about Google, but luckily they can't do much about it. And two, Google does not have to accommodate these idiots, but often they do. And if you say, hey, Google, could you retake the picture of this spot? They usually will. Like, there's a naked guy in front of my business. Could you please come back when there isn't a naked guy? And Google usually like, okay, we'll come back. Or, okay,
Or
we'll
hey,
block the
I'm in
naked
this
guy.
picture. I don't want to be in that picture.
And they're cool about it. And that's the kind of, when it comes to civil liberties, I really like the idea that people have freedoms. Like, you should have the freedom to take the pictures and do whatever you want with them and all that. But just because you have a freedom doesn't mean you have to always exercise it. And like Google has the discretion to be nice or to exercise their freedom on a case-by-case basis.
That's what's free about it. If you had to, keep the picture up and give the guy the finger all the time, that's also not freedom. If you have to use every right you have and you can't, decide not to use your right, then you're not really free. Free means you have to be able to choose.
But anyway, to quote Slashdot here to sum this up, because we've been talking a little bit, Google has begun to scan the streets of Paris as part of the Streetview service, but the company may be hindered from publishing them unedited. The reason? French privacy laws. Google may be forced to blur faces or use low-resolution versions of their photographs. The deal here, basically, is that France has very strict privacy laws, which, a lot of people are privacy advocates, but in this case, I patently disagree. I feel like anything that is visible from a public place is public property in terms of viewing. Like,
yeah, if you're worried about your privacy, why are you walking around a public street? It's like, if you want something to be private, do it in your house with the blinds closed.
But there's this is an interesting problem because a very useful, very cool, amazing technology, something that would have been unfathomable to me 5 years ago and is now like this daily, like I use this tool on a daily basis and it's awesome. The people of Paris might not be able to get this obviously beneficial technology because they have overbearing laws restricting the rights of using photographs and images and things to protect their privacy.
Well, that's been the battle of the past however many years, isn't it? Is that technology pushing against the laws designed to work in a world where those technologies were not possible.
Plus, I don't know. I feel like we need to do a whole show on just the idea of privacy in the modern world because...
Yeah.
On one hand, I feel like there are certain rights to bastions of privacy, but the other hand, I feel like
your medical records.
I feel like as the world gets more and more interconnected, you can't hide a lot of information, and I think a lot of technologies are being hindered by the fact that people are so afraid, or that, like social security numbers, you shouldn't have to hide your social security number. The fact that people can use that number, which is not secure in any way, to do things is horrible.
Yeah.
That's just like that because social security numbers were conceived in an era before the interlinked databases that we have today. And I feel like the system is broken to the point of it should just be completely scrapped.
Yeah, something like that.
The number system, not social security.
No. But social security is a topic for another show.
I raised like 4 issues. So this is basically my news is we're going to do like 5 shows on stuff like this in the future.
Yeah, right.
And France.
And then next time it's time to do a show like that, we'll be sitting here. What do we do a show on? Duh, I don't know.
Remind us in the forum.
It's not going to happen. All right, so check this out, right? I'm having some job issues lately, all right? We'll see what goes on.
That you are.
Of course, I'm not really in danger of losing my job. I'm just sort of slightly gruntled.
Man, every time I think I'm not doing well at my job, and all my jobs, like, man, am I doing my job? I feel like I'm slacking. And then my boss will always take me aside, like, I need to speak with you. It's like, oh, crap, are they firing me? Am I getting blah, 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 blah? But they always give me a raise or something, so.
Yeah, anyway. So there's a lot of things out there lately that are sort of opportunities for people like me to sort of go out on their own and make software. For example, Nintendo's WiiWare launched today. Instead of virtual console games, they put the WiiWare out there, which I got to go downstairs. We got to buy some games.
Yes,
right?
we do.
All right. Of course, I got to buy more stupid Wii points. I think I might just buy the big package of Wii points just to make it easier, not going to keep typing the credit card number in on the Wii. Anyway, and the way that works apparently is Nintendo is, according to what I've read, they're being very open. They're saying, anyone who wants to make WiiWare, go nuts. We're just going to make sure that it's bug-free, and we're going to make sure that it's, you have to get it rated by the ESRB.
We got to make a goddamn tower defense game.
I know,
like
and then
now.
They said that they'll put it on there, and you choose your price. I guess you can't do free, because I guess they get a cut, right? But, I don't know, they might let you do free, who knows? And I'm like, hey, I could totally do that. And if I quit my job right now and Nintendo gave me the WiiWare kit, I could totally make a WiiWare game and that would be my job. I'd live off the WiiWare game. I'd be set, right? Here's another example, which is my news. RIM, R-I-M, not R-Y-M like this person here, right? RIM, which stands for, if you didn't know, Research in Motion.
BlackBerry.
BlackBerry. They're better known as BlackBerry. If you look at the back of a BlackBerry, it says RIM on it, right? R-I-M. So RIM.
Well, my BlackBerry says RIM and RYM on the back of it. Oh.
So the BlackBerry company is launching a $150 million, right? That's like enough for the rest of my life times a billion. Not times a billion.
Times a billion.
Yeah. Venture capitalist fund for mobile apps. In other words, if you want to make BlackBerry applications, something Scott can do. Scott knows the Java, right? They're giving out $150 million to people and companies who are going to make BlackBerry apps.
Now,
if you give me, right, $100,000, not even, if you give me $80,000, a small fraction of that $150 million, I can afford to just quit my job and spend an entire year on BlackBerry applications. I could write like 10 BlackBerry applications in a year.
you know what you got to write first? Interfaces to all the Google stuff that works with domains.
Exactly. I mean, I could do so much. I could make like the best BlackBerry applications known to man if they gave me just 80 grand. Just give Scott Rubin 80 grand. I'll quit my job.
You know what?
I'll go sit
Scott,
at my brand new computer.
You could probably do it on 40 grand because you could live on 40 grand if you didn't have any commutation expenses.
Maybe, but it would be a little
But the thing is, remember, you have my bankroll because I actually, listeners aside, I kind of got a gigantic raise the other day. That's why I've been kind of geeky about my job lately.
Yeah, okay, so
I'll bankroll you.
My question is, how do I get them to give me this? I mean, Apple is giving money to people making iPhone apps. If I can get that money, I can make iPhone apps too. I'll go out and buy an iPhone like tomorrow and start making iPhone apps. I can make some.
You should probably look into it. And
How
then
do I get?
then email all the people, and then find out there might be like an application or something you can do.
How I can't. I couldn't even find. Right? They're like, yeah, we're letting all these developers make WiiWare apps. I could not find the WiiWare dev kit anything. Right? How do I get in on this stuff? How do I get these monies? I could totally quit my job and just write apps that would like change the world. I don't know how to get this money. I need someone to help me get this money.
I'll bankroll you. I'll be your sugar daddy.
I need such a small amount of this money. 1 year's salary.
Does you laugh at sugar daddy?
I don't know, but
that was a delayed laugh.
Someone help me out here, all right? Seriously. I'm not even joking about this. Like, I would seriously just quit my job, and I could take a year off. I could actually, what I'd do is I would write a game, right? And I would put the game on WiiWare, iPhone, and BlackBerry. I'd make a cross-platform NDS.
The scary thing is, Scott, Alex, and I have been working on, we haven't actually made a single goddamn game, but we have a lot of, like, pretty much, if the three of us had taken time off, like if we could ever just take time off like a month and work on one of these things instead of doing our normal jobs, it'd be done and amazing.
Yeah, the thing is, if someone actually did this, I would probably take like a week off and go to Florida, but then I would come back and then I would do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, I'm dead serious about this. Like, I am looking at this action. I need someone with knowledges to help me get monies from these companies. They're giving it out. They want someone to write an app. I can do it.
They're just giving it away.
They just need to give me a BlackBerry dev kit, and you'll have BlackBerry apps, probably within the week.
Things of the day. So not too long ago, we're playing this Burning Wheel game on Tuesdays, and the Burning Wheel game is there's a lot of Roman Empire inspired stuff in it. So we were talking, and we thought, hey, what if we all dressed up in period for one of the games? And, we're just a geeky enough group to where that was a very appealing idea because...
Toga.
Yes, toga party.
Woo!
Something that we didn't do in college, we're going to do now that we're like in our mid-20s.
That makes it so much more awesome.
It does. But of course, we were thinking about we should actually do the toga party. Let's actually do this. And then Scott and I, of course, as we always do whenever we think of something like this, thought, I ain't using no sheet.
That's right. Getting me a real toga from the internets.
Now, first we looked and we found how to make togas. It's not that hard. This one website was great. It was like, first off, rule number 1, don't use a sheet. Cloth is so cheap. Like, seriously, dude, go to a craft store. I don't think you understand how cheap cloth is. For real. Also, cloth comes in colors other than bedsheet white or stained bedsheet white.
But that's a good website right there.
It is, but it is not my thing of the day.
No.
My thing of the day is then we decided, all right, because, the way we always handle getting something like this is or even if we don't get it, if we just plan it, we decide, all right, what is the best solution? Like, if money was no object, what is the good solution? Doesn't mean we're gonna get that.
The ultimate solution, get some Hollywood costume making people.
Yes, but then we're like we figure out what's the best we could do, and then we decide if that's worth it or if we're gonna go cheap. So we decided, all right, if I want to just buy a period toga, a real one, how much would it be? And we looked around.
One that was actually from the period or just a replica?
Well, a replica.
Yes, I would like a Roman toga worn by a Roman. Yes, well, if you rob the museum, you might get it for a while before they catch you.
And we looked on Amazon, and they have some cheap costumes that look like real uncomfortable crap.
Yeah, but one of them looked kind of nice, but it looked uncomfortable also.
Yeah, but then, I found this website, Lorenz Nest, and this site sells, if you're into Greek or Roman stuff and you want to dress the part, good God, do they sell everything you need.
For a price.
It's not that...
See, I wanted the brush helmet, and you know what? They have the brush helmet.
They do. It's not even that
but
expensive.
It's $280.
You know what, though? That's less than I expected.
It is less, but it's a reasonable price considering that it's a real brush helmet, or at least a real replica brush helmet. But as much as I want a brush helmet, I don't want one $280 bad.
Well, I think what happened here was you think, how much would that cost? And $280 is a reasonable price for what that is. But our hope was, what if our expectation of price is much higher than reality? It's worth a shot. You never know. But this site answered the question, and partly because I got that raise, I'm kind of thinking about getting one. But if you want an authentic, like, Roman-style toga, like as they would wear, made out of wool or linen, I recommend linen. They're about $200.
That's a little bit too much. I'm looking for more like a $50 to $75 toga.
Now, if you want the senatorial one, it's $275. Now, multiple websites have said, don't get wool. Don't get wool. For the love of God, do not get wool.
Well, are you supposed to wear something under the toga or not?
I don't know. I don't know a lot about togas, to be honest.
We got to do some toga research. Is there maybe a toga expert in the audience?
There is a toga Wikipedia that I'm not going to read now.
Toga.
But just in case you wondered, if you want a semi-authentic linen toga, the nicest one, the senatorial one with the lining and everything, it's under $300.
Oh, lining. Ooh.
Well, no, like the lines on the, like, it's white, but it has, like, nice embroidered lines around all the edges.
Does it tell you how to put it on? Does it come with instructions?
I'm sure there is a website.
All right.
So what do you got?
All right, so I'm using the Twitter a little bit more. I got this Twitter client called...
Are you a Twitter shitter?
No. I got this, like, Twitter client that works in Adobe Air. All right, so I installed the Adobe Air Alpha for Linux.
Non-citizens of Rome are forbidden from wearing togas, according to Wikipedia in an uncited sentence. Anyway, continue.
And then I got this Twitter client going, and then I'm still not really feeling it, but I'm gonna try to give it more of a chance.
The Romans wore togas differently from the way the Greeks did.
Just ignore my thing of the day.
Yes, continue.
Fuck you. So I figure if there is something good there, I'll give it like a little bit more of a chance before I just forget about it. So along the way, I sort of found this thing that sort of made the rounds today, link-wise. And basically what it is if you're getting a package, right, you type in your tracking number, and it'll Twitter you whenever there's a status update on your package.
That's one of the best uses of Twitter I've ever seen.
The thing is, it's pretty much, this thing has existed. There were Jabber bots that did this for the longest time.
But now it's on Twitter.
Yeah, but now it's on Twitter.
See, because that's the thing. Why would I want...
There's no advantage to using this on Twitter versus any other instant messaging
That's what I was about to say.
thing.
Why not just have it Jabber me?
Why have it Jabber or AIM?
Or you know what? It emails me anyway. I always have Gmail open.
Right, you can use email or AIM or Jabber, and it's just as good. In fact, it's better than Twitter.
He's better. He's 2 more than X.
Right, because Twitter's slow, and Twitter also sort of has this public element. And I don't know if you really want to share your...
Yes, Scott's LCD is now on his porch. Scott doesn't get home until 6. In fact, Scott just told you he's at work late.
Yeah, you kind of want your package tracking to be like a private to you thing, right? So it's sort of like, why do this with Twitter other than to get attention because Twitter's the hot thing right now?
But that's probably the best use.
Yeah, but regardless, IMing someone or text messaging when package tracking updates, pretty good idea. So that's it. It's just a short thing of the day.
So togas are worn over loincloths. Or aprons.
Loincloth, the most ancient type of clothing after seashell and leaf. It was pretty much leaf, seashell, loincloth. That was
Well, you're forgetting heavy furs. Gave you an armor class of 5.
No, you see, the heavy furs were developed in tandem with the loincloth, just in different places.
Ah.
See, if you lived in the more tropical, close to the equator, the closer to the equator you got, the more odds that it was going to be loincloth, and the smaller the loincloth.
You're forgetting the most important element that penis gourd. Penis gourd, penis gourd, penis gourd.
Penis gourd was an advancement of loincloth.
No. See, you realize that to anyone who doesn't realize...
How else could they gird loins without loincloths?
I believe you mean gourd loins. If anyone doesn't realize why I said penis gourd 3 times, penis gourd, penis gourd, penis gourd, it's a Farkism. Anytime the word penis gourd is mentioned, someone must say penis gourd, penis gourd, penis gourd. It's kind of a thing.
All right.
That's all I got. So what are we talking about tonight? I don't think this will take very long.
We're going to talk about like the history of video cards and such.
So
check this out, right? You have a computer. Computer has the processing, which is the processor. It has the inputs and the outputs. Inputs are mice and keyboard. Outputs are monitors and speakers and all that other printers, right? So
the line's been blurred a little bit. I mean, the Optimus keyboard is also output.
I know, it's crazy, right?
Yeah.
It's an input device and an output device. So one of the outputs is the monitor. But the thing is, your computer doesn't really speak monitor. I mean, your monitor is a television. You need to get the computer, which is digital, zeros and ones, to somehow send out an analog television signal that the TV can understand.
Now remember, I mean, like the computer revolution, what made computers, like modern computers, special as opposed to other kinds of purpose-built devices was that their general purpose. You know, that was the whole thing. It was the first general purpose computing device.
Right, you had like calculators. It was a computer that could calculate and couldn't do anything else. You had synthesizers. It was a computer that could synthesize, but it couldn't do much else.
But a computer was a programmable computer. You could tell it to do basically any series of binary operations and get the results.
Yeah, anything that could be done digitally, it could do as long as it could get the input and the output.
Now, the real deal here is that in general, if you make the more general you make a piece of hardware, the less good it is at any particular task.
Right. If I make a chip, right, and that chip only does that's specifically designed, a piece of hardware, physical, specifically designed to say add 1 and 1, that is going to add 1 and 1 so fast. You have no idea.
1 and 1 and 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1.
And add 1 and 1 so fast, it'll be unbelievable. But if I make a chip that can add any numbers, it's going to add 1 and 1 a little bit slower than the 1 and 1 chip, right? If I make a chip that can, do anything in the world, like an Intel, Core 2 Duo, it's still wicked fast just because we have wicked fast
Now,
things
we're definitely
these days.
oversimplifying because general purpose computers tend to take complex tasks and then break them down into smaller tasks, and you multiply by doing 1 and 1 and 1 and 1 and 1. Or maybe you have a special purpose-built thing in the processor that says, oh, you're multiplying 2 matrices. Well, actually, no, that's mostly what video cards do.
Right. So anyway, the point is that you have to have this part of the computer that converts digital to what the monitor speaks. Because even if the monitor is a digital monitor, like using a DVI cable or an HDMI cable, the monitor it's still a different, language. You need some part of the computer to convert, sort of the frame buffer, which is pretty much just, you're like, okay, I'm not going to explain frame buffers, but it's pretty much a piece of memory, and in that memory is a picture of what the screen should look like right now. You need something to convert that, which is what the computer speaks, into what the monitor speaks. So, back in the day, all you had was on the motherboard, there'd be like a chip that would take the frame buffer and turn it into a TV signal, and then there'd be a wire coming out of that would go to the TV. All right. Then, over time, it got a little more complex. You had, VGA eventually. We get higher resolutions, right? And things were getting pretty complicated. Then, what sort of happened was people wanted to do things like watch videos, right? Or do 3D stuff, right? And those are very complicated tasks. And having the CPU, that was doing everything else the computer was doing, also do these complicated tasks was sort of burdening it, and it was getting really slow.
Now, there's another factor here in that it just so happens that a task like doing video tends to be very computationally intensive in a very narrow band of computations.
Yep. It also just so happened that these tasks, like watching video and doing 3D stuff, like 3D games, were very popular among regular everyday people. I mean, there are other, specially designed hardware bits, such as, you can, I know.
Well, remember when there was the math coprocessor?
Exactly, right? You know, if you go get some like wicked science computer, right? It probably has all these special science cards in it that do special science stuff, but those aren't things that normal people want to do.
Well, I mean, remember, we're not only talking about the video card, but the video card is just a purpose-built kind of extension. And it's not like, I mean, modern video cards are a relatively new thing, but similar add-ons to computers have existed for almost as long as computers have.
The sound card, right? It's a special chip because a lot of people wanted sound to come out of their computers. So because that was such a common thing, rather than have the CPU do all the work of sound, they made a special sound chip, you know, which is also an analog conversion kind of thing, and you would put that in there separately. That way, your computer could do really good things with sound without burdening the CPU. So video is the same kind of thing, and they eventually came out with a special video card as opposed to just having, you know, a video chip on your motherboard. And at first, they were kind of hokey. Like, I remember there were even some where you would take the video cable from your regular video card, send it into the special video card, then from the special video card to the monitor. And it was really kind of crazy. You need special drivers, and it got way weird. But eventually they just sort of said, all right, we're going to have, PCI slots. You just put this video card in your computer, and you plug the monitor into that, and the computer will make sure to use that as the video instead of, you know, whatever's on the motherboard. And then they weren't even putting video cards on motherboards anymore, which, you know, was like unthinkable. You know, you would actually have to have a special video card. You couldn't plug your monitor directly into your motherboard. It didn't work anymore. And, you know, over time, it got sort of crazy. Now, in the early days, right, they sort of had, you know, NVIDIA was there pretty early. ATI was there pretty early. Matrox was there really early. And so was Voodoo. I don't know if people remember the Voodoos, right?
The Voodoo. I knew better.
Yeah.
I knew better than to buy into that crap.
Right. And in the early days, Voodoo was sort of the popular deal, right? Matrox was pretty popular because they could do dual monitors and they could do 2D stuff that the other people couldn't do. Like if you wanted two monitors, Matrox was the only way to go, pretty much.
And if you were doing like 2D design or anything, Matrox cards were like the god cards.
Yep. And also the ATI wasn't really popular. ATI was sort of what you got if you bought a computer with a built-in card. Like they had that market cornered. Like if you bought a computer, you know, that was already put together, like a Dell or something, or an IBM, ATI was in there already. NVIDIA was sort of like, you know, you want to do the 3D business with OpenGL, and Voodoo was you want to do the 3D business with Glide. Now, back in the day, Glide was actually pretty hot because the Voodoo cards are really popular. And
we're not going to explain exactly what that was.
We're not going to explain what it was.
A show on OpenGL will be required.
All you have to know is
that
the Voodoo cards use Glide and the NVIDIA cards use OpenGL.
Here, a layman's way of putting it is that the Voodoo cards basically kind of half-assed OpenGL in order to make it affordable.
Yeah.
And it was really fast, but it was also pretty shitty.
Yeah. But anyway, so you would buy games, right? And the games, like you would buy a game and it would say, yeah, okay, this game supports Glide. So if you had like Glide card, like a Voodoo card, then you would get the card to help you out on that game and the game would be cool.
I mean, I remember
but
so
if you
clearly.
didn't have a Glide card, like if you had an NVIDIA card, then that game wouldn't be helped by that NVIDIA card. So you needed to have a card that went with your games.
But I remember so clearly, like back in the day, there was Quake. The first modern 3D FPS, even though I consider Quake 2 to be the first, like, playable modern 3D
Quake
FPS.
1 was the first 3D FPS, though.
Yes, but it was kind of awful.
It was a bad game, but
the mods were good.
Technology-wise, that it was, you know, the first one.
Yep, you got to explore a brown castle.
And you got to look up and down and left and right, and you could aim in every direction and walk in every direction.
And
jump.
Yeah, it had its problems. But then, you know, there was an add-on that you could get. GL Quake.
And that, if you had a GL card, so if you had a Voodoo card, you were SOL.
Well, not really, but we'll talk about that when we do the OpenGL show.
But if you had an NVIDIA card, GL Quake, suddenly it was awesome.
See, the thing is, actual true OpenGL support was not common early on.
It was very difficult. You had to install GL things. And
also a lot of cards just didn't support it.
Yeah, pretty much everything sucked in those days. Sucked hard. There were also like S3 cards. Like I remember there was a point at which like if you had an S3 card, then Descent 2 would be helped out by it, but nothing else really. And It was bad times. But that's what you had to do if you wanted to, have, the 3D games, because people had to write the 3D game using a specific 3D language to talk to the specific card, and all the cards are different. You need to match it up. But eventually things got better, mostly because of DirectX, and everyone started just doing Direct 3D or OpenGL, and that was pretty much the only choices. And it narrowed down over time, and Voodoo, they were stupid and they went away, right? Because instead of improving their technology, they just made cards that had more and more chips on them without actually making better chips. So then they got canned. The Voodoo 3 was a stinker, and they never made it anywhere else.
There were a lot of problems with
I remember
Voodoo.
there was a Voodoo card, and they were like, yeah, this Voodoo card is so crazy, it's going to have like 8 chips on it. You have to plug it into the wall on its own. Like, there'll be a power cord coming out of your video card. And I was like, that's never going to fly. And it never flew.
Yeah, but we're not, a lot of that is for other shows at other times.
But it narrowed down to where it's pretty much just ATI and NVIDIA. And the difference between the two was this. NVIDIA was a little better with the OpenGLs. ATI was a little better with Direct 3Ds.
Until very recently, NVIDIA had great drivers and ATI had garbage drivers.
Pretty much. And also, the NVIDIA was a little bit more money for it sort of varied, like which one had the better price to performance ratio, but NVIDIA tended to be a little bit behind on that. The other thing was that the ATI made the ATI cards. If you wanted an ATI chip, you bought a card that was made by ATI, and that was your option. That was the only option. NVIDIA just made the chips, and anyone in the world could make NVIDIA cards. Like, my first video card was a TNT2 made by Diamond, but it had it had the first NVIDIA TNT2 chip on it, right?
Well, I had my Creative Graphics Blaster Extreme.
And what kind of chip was on there?
I don't remember.
Yeah. But NVIDIA made chips and other people made the cards, right? And from there, they just sort of had a race. And they kept racing until where we are today, which is where, for a time, NVIDIA had superior Linux support, and I still think they do, but AMD ATI merged, and ATI sort of released all this driver stuff to the Linux people, so the ATI driver is getting way better. The open source one's getting way better. So at that department has sort of sorted itself out. And I guess that's really the history of video cards. What else is there to say about it?
Yeah, kind of a cop-out show, but we had a lot to say in the beginning about unrelated things.
Yeah, things you probably didn't know about, like the early days of the video card and stuff.
I guess my question to you is, of all the things we touched on briefly, what among there are you interested in? Because we could do a show on OpenGL. It'd be
we could talk about like what OpenGL is, what DirectX
or just
is.
3D acceleration in general. We could talk about, I guess, on Tuesday the full history of FPSs.
Yep. The thing you really just need to know is that people wanted to do 3D. A lot of people wanted to do it in their computers. The CPU couldn't be bothered because CPUs are really expensive. You couldn't have 2 of them. That's crazy. And if you had the CPU do the 3D, it'd be really slow and shitty because it had to do other things at the same time.
Now, one bit of practical knowledge, pretty much, if you're not a gamer, it matters very little.
It matters pretty much none.
Like nowadays, unless you're a gamer, you really don't care what kind of video card
you want the
you
cheapest
have.
one.
Yeah, or just use the one built into your motherboard. It'll work.
You have to get a motherboard that has one built in.
Yeah,
That's
true.
actually a really good option if you don't care. But, they made a special chip that would do just the graphics, and then they wrote the games and the drivers to make it happen. And that's the way it is.
This has been Geeknights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for the opening music.
Be sure to visit our website at www.frontrowcrew.com, where you'll find show notes, links, our awesome forum, a link to our Frapper map, and links to all the RSS feeds.
We say feeds plural because Geeknights airs 4 nights a week, covering 4 different brands of geekery. Mondays are science and technology. Tuesdays, we have video games, board games, and RPGs. Wednesdays are anime, manga, comic nights. And Thursdays are the catch-alls for various rants and tomfoolery.
You can send us feedback by email to geeknights@frontrowcrew.com. Or you can send audio feedback via Audio. Just click the link that says Send Me an Audio on the right side of our website.
If you like what you hear, you can catch the last 100 episodes in iTunes or in your favorite podcatcher. For the complete archives, visit the website, which has everything.
Geeknights is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 2.5 license. This means you can do whatever you want with it as long as you give us credit, don't make money, and share it in kind. Geeknights is recorded live with no studio and no audience. But unlike those other late shows, it's actually recorded at night.